Alrighty, welcome. We're back to Science of Flight. We're going to be talking about Chapter 4. And I guess I have the wrong camera on there. Let me change the camera around here a little bit. We're actually going to go through Chapter 4, Lesson 3. I'm going to bypass Lesson 3. It has to do with dead reckoning and when. Go to, page 302? 302, and you can actually look at some of that. Dead reckoning. I'm not going to go over this chapter yet. I may do it here after our exam and our program, but dead reckoning. Does anybody know what dead reckoning is? How many people here have ever sailed in their life? Couple? Handful? That's good. I mean, this is a mile high in the desert. I don't expect that. When you sail and your wind is blowing against you, what direction do you go?
Opposite.
You can go backwards. You're exactly right. And so the whole concept of dead reckoning is if I am trying to sail straight towards Cadet Smith and the wind is blowing here, where am I going to go?
That way.
That way. So a smart person, if I'm flying and I want to end up where Cadet Smith is, and the wind's blowing from here, I would probably aim towards Cadet Hoffman, and then the wind would blow me towards Cadet Smith. And that simple idea is what dead reckoning is. Cadet Hetherington, you're a shooter, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have to worry about the wind when you shoot?
No, we don't. I don't shoot far enough for competition, but in longer ranges you would, sir.
That's a good point. I mean, long range. You hear about snipers and stuff like that. That's essential. And it's even the point in war, they shoot a shot. You have a spotter, right? You have a shooter and you have a spotter. So you shoot it, and he misses by 3 feet to the left, and the spotter goes 3 feet to the left. So guess where do you aim?
3 feet.
3 feet to the right. Yeah, I mean, it's just that simple. And it happens quick, of course. But that is dead reckoning. That's what this entire chapter is about. You do need to know this, but you do not need to know this for your fourth quarter project, which has to do with plane crashes and why plane crash. We're going to Embry-Riddle. So we're going to skip Lesson 3. So now everybody go to Lesson 4, Flight Instrumentation. This is rather important. And you can sort of understand this relative to driving a car. Things people are more used to is driving a car and what exactly you do. On this first example here they give you on page 321, it's a rather famous incident. Does anybody know what this incident they're talking about here on 321?
Hudson River.
The Hudson River, yes. What's this guy's name?
Sully.
Captain
Chesley.
Sullenberger. One thing that I'm going to emphasize to you guys in flying is that in the civilian world, the civilians are very, very regulated on where they can fly, especially when you have paying customers on board and everything's 100% safe. They're very, very strict on where they can fly. And so in general, airline pilots are fabulous with learning the rules and following the rules perfectly. They never break rules. You just can't. If you do, you lose your pilot license. Military pilots, on the other hand, are very interested and very aware of things that are outside the rules, because when you're in war, everybody doesn't follow by the rules. And military pilots practice every day emergencies. Every day of my life when I'd fly, I'd always do an emergency or two. And then actually the same thing happens even now when I'm flying civilian. I'll pretend like the engine turns off. I'll pretend like I lose my navigator aids or lose electricity. So military pilots every day practice. Are you guys going to talk all class, or are you just going to talk when I'm trying to talk? I appreciate you being quiet when I'm teaching, okay? So Captain Sullenberg was very lucky in this situation that he actually had a lot of Air Force experience. You look at the top of page 321. He graduated from the Air Force Academy, and he was actually a glider pilot, which you can do in the Air Force Academy if you want to be a pilot. We have Cadet Temple, who is going to the Air Force Academy next year. He's our former commander here. He wants to be a pilot. He's planning on being a glider pilot. So actually, this airline pilot had a pretty unusual background. He was a glider pilot, and he was a fighter pilot in the military, and then he ended up being an airline pilot, which is pretty cool. So he had a lot of experience working with emergencies, is my point. What happened to him that on this fateful day that made things very unusual for him?
Canadian Geese.
Yeah, the Canadian Geese decide to hit him. Where did the Canadian Geese hit him?
His
In
wing.
the turbine. Engine.
In the turbine, yes. It just hit. It's not a bad day. How many engines does the guy have?
6.
I don't know. I think it's 4.
4.
I mean, so if you lose an engine, it's no big deal, right?
A whole flock of geese.
Yes, this was very unusual in that it was not just one engine. It was a whole bunch of, I think it was actually 2 engines, 2 huge engines. And yes, it was a very unusual thing that the flock of geese went in both engines
On the same wing.
on the same aircraft. There's only 2 engines. And actually you see on the top of page 320, he was flying, he heard some thumps, and that's not highly unusual. I mean, you're flying through the bird's airspace, right? And they're there before we were. And then all of a sudden, you hear a thump. I mean, I've had bird strikes a lot in my career. But the problem is he heard a bird strike, and then he said he immediately had to look at his flight instruments to confirm not only we have time to go through a ditch, we didn't have time to even finish the checklist for the loss of thrust in both engines. Both engines went out, period, dot. And over New York City, are there many parks just to land in and or golf courses? Can you put a big plane like this down a golf course? No. So, fortunately, this guy had a very, very good day because he watched his flight instruments. Everything came out quick. He took over the aircraft from the co-pilot and then actually made an outstanding decision to land in the Hudson River, yeah. And there's some cool pictures here of course, this is New York City. Everybody had cameras and pictures. And you can see the plane actually floating in the Hudson River and being rescued. And every one of the aircraft, people on the aircraft was survived, every one of them. And I'm telling you, it's as rare as possible.
How did that work? It goes like into the...
He landed. He did a perfect landing with the tail hitting first.
That's what I thought.
The rest of the stories, he glided. I mean, this is a huge glider. This is a humongous, 100-ton glider. And what happened was he barely missed the top of a bridge. So, in retrospect, and I think there's actually a video reconstruction that I do not have here, but what would have happened if he hit the Brooklyn Bridge?
Everyone was dead.
He would have gone from a hero to a
Hero.
but now he is a hero. And I'm telling you, he missed that Brooklyn Bridge by hundreds of feet. So he was spot on. I mean, he did his job. What if when the engines went out, he goes, oh, I don't know what to do. Let's talk about it a long time. What's the first thing you do when you have a problem in the plane?
Fly.
And he goes, okay, engines out, no big deal. We have emergencies. He does simulators this. You have simulators this all the time. And he immediately found a place to land. And I'm telling you, if he had delayed 10 or 20 seconds discussing this and figuring out what's going on, but he was decisive, he found a place to land, and I'm telling you, he barely missed that bridge. And he did a great job. So he was quite a hero for this situation. And guess what? He knew the flight instrumentations. Matter of fact, on page 322, there is the very famous picture of everybody else. The other thing that was classy about this guy, and when you have emergencies as a commander, who was the last person to leave the plane?
Pilot.
He was the last person. The plane was sinking. You can look at the back part of the plane there on page 322. And the back part of the plane was sinking, and he actually was the last person to leave the plane. So that was rather impressive.
How fast were they on or like how long were they on before rescue boats got there?
They were immediately there because see, they have ferries in in New York City. They go across the Hudson also. So there were boats with people on them anyway, just crossing. They saw the plane laying right there in front of them, and it was sinking. It did not sink completely, but it was amazing. And
Take to get in underwater.
I think it was like 30 minutes. I mean, it was real quick. It was quick. It was excellent. Okay, so then on page 323, we talk about some basic flight instruments that are on every plane. One of them is a airspeed indicator. So when we talk about airspeed indicator, there it's the middle of page 323, tell me what a dynamic pressure is.
It's like the pressure that is presented when an aircraft is in motion.
But well, what is it?
Type of pressure that is present.
How do you measure an aircraft? How do you measure a dynamic pressure?
Airspeed indicator.
A gauge, but I mean, where does the gauge get the information?
The airspeed indicator.
How fast you're going, sir.
But where does it get the information from?
The flight
The pressure change. Sensor.
Pressure, you're getting there, you go. So how do we measure the pressure?
PTOT static.
A PTOT. Everybody say PTOT.
PTOT.
I'm laughing at you. About every other year I teach this every year, but it's actually called PTOT. P-I-T-O-T. Like how do you spell foyer? Foyer. F-O-Y-E-R. It's a French word, so they pronounce it differently. But yes, that's a pitot tube. A pitot tube. And if you look up here behind me, then you can see the actual, it's an airspeed indicator that has the dynamic pressure, and the pitot tube is the little pointy thing on the front of every plane. And it's a pointy thing that has the pressure coming in it. On the F-15 here, actual pitot tube is right on the side. It's a little pointy thing that comes in, and it measures the pressure of the plane flying through the air. And then you have you have to have the differential between that and
Static pressure.
the static pressure. Where would the static pressure of, whoopsie, plane crashing. where would the static pressure be in a plane?
In the front panel.
Inside. You're exactly right. It'd be inside. It was right next to my right leg. And as you can see by the picture here, the pitot tube is the pointy thing that would be sticking out the front of the plane, and the static pressure source would be inside the plane, be zero. So if you have the pressure here, there's no wind coming right here. This would be a static pressure. But if you're running, or if you're in a car, or you're in a boat, or you're in a plane, you'd have a different pressure. The differentiation of that is your dynamic versus static pressure, and that gives you your airspeed. The different airspeed indicators that measure off that are your airspeed indicator, of course, how fast you're going. The next we call it vertical speed indicator, which is how high you're going, how fast you're climbing or how fast you're descending, the VVI. And the other is altimeter. What does altimeter tell you?
How high you are.
Exactly, how high you are. And that is all coming from the pitot-static system. Basically, when the dynamic pressure changes, when you slow down, your airplane slows down and your indicator slows down. What are some problems? If you look at this system here that we have here on the picture, what are some problems that could happen with this system?
Break.
Well, how does it break?
This
Trade opening
Airspeed.
doesn't work.
How?
Something clogs your PTOT too.
Oh, give me air 5. Good job. Excellent job. What could clog your PTOT? I'm just kidding.
Air.
Don't ever say PTOT. You can't graduate from it. It's PTO. Okay. Everybody say PTO.
PTOT.
All right, PTOT. I love it. I remember that. All right, PTO. So, what can clog a pitot tube?
air.
Train opening.
A bird. Yes, you're exactly right. But these things are very small. So what else could clog it? Oh my goodness, you're exactly right. One of the first emergencies I ever had was I had a big bug. I don't know, like a bee. I mean, a bug hit the pitot tube in my plane. And all of a sudden I looked up there and I was going 0 airspeed. And I'm going, that's funny. I'm going really fast, but it says 0. And I couldn't figure out what it was, but a bug had gotten right exactly in there. Good airplanes, like commercial airplanes, would have multiple ones. And so one gets clogged and the other one's going 400 miles an hour, then it would disregard that one. But that's exactly what else environmentally in the winter in the clouds could cause a problem? Ice. Water. And so guess what? If you were a smart guy and you're carrying around all these people and you don't want to get sued, what would you do to the pitot tube to keep it from icing over? De-ice it. You click a button, it automatically turns on really, really hot. And that's one of the first checks that I would do in my plane, but I would turn it on, and they, believe it or not, a maintenance person would come over and actually touch it to make sure it's warm. And if it's warm, then you can take off because you're going through the clouds. You don't want it to ice over. Yes, sir.
When I was flying down to here, I had to stop in Chicago. And so when we flew out from Columbus and Chicago, they would get this big old truck and start spraying down the whole plane. I don't know what that was for.
That's called de-icing. We cover that actually in the, you should read the first part of our book there. It talks a lot about that. And because if you have ice on the plane, that messes up the aerodynamic capability, you can crash. So the pitot tube, similarly, you'd want to keep it hot so that it wouldn't ice over. But that's exactly what happens. That doesn't happen much in Arizona. It would in West Virginia, though. Yes, Hetherington?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, so you got to get these things straight. So the bottom line is the differentiation in pressure, and you can actually see how it's designed here on this picture and on the bottom of page 324. When I ask you how fast your plane is going, what is an intelligent question back to me?
What's the airspeed? Or what's the wind?
What's the ground speed?
No.
Keep going.
No, what's
That's
the?
altimeter. No, not the altimeter.
Look on page 325. If you say, sir, how fast is your speed going?
No, how fast is the?
What's your true airspeed?
No.
I might say, what kind of airspeed are you talking about,
Yeah.
right? Look how many airspeeds are on page 325.
4. Indicated. No, 3.
4.
5.
5.
And so it gets kind of complicated. And to be honest, I'm not going to cover all these details in this class. Next year, if I teach my honors aviation, I actually teach you how to fly. We go into this because every pilot needs to know what an indicated, calibrated, equivalent, true airspeed, and ground speed is. But the point is, the other day we talked about winds, and we're flying, saying, hey, if you're flying at actually, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Pretty cool. I flew from here to South Carolina last week, and we were up at 35,000 feet over Texas or something like that. Don't you remember there was a huge ice storm on the East Coast last week? And that was because the jet stream came down into Texas and isolated the hot of the west versus the cold of the east. But the pilot actually came on the plane and said, we're going to end up landing on the East Coast like 45 minutes early. 45 minutes. And it's only a 4-hour flight. So how do you think he took off from here and ended up 45 minutes early there?
The Earth was moving faster.
The Earth was moving faster. That one day, the Earth, because the asteroid coming by, started to move fast. No, try again. Yes, sir.
Because the wind from west to east was pushing.
Ding, 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 ding. Look at the bottom here. It says ground we had a tailwind of 150 miles an hour.
Wow.
150. And if the plane is flying 450 miles an hour, all of a sudden the plane was now flying 600 miles an hour. He was going 10 miles a minute over the ground, which is not very, that's normal. It's not normal. That airspeed is common with fighters, but very uncommon with airline pilots. And so he was amazed. So we got there 45 minutes early on a 4-hour flight because it was a 150 mile an hour tailwind because of the jet stream. So that was ground speed. Indicated airspeed. Look on what's indicated airspeed. What is that?
The airspeed is shown on the airspeed.
There you go. So look on page 324 on the left there. What is the airspeed of that indicator there on 324 on the left? What airspeed is that? 100, and exactly what is it? 100 to 112. Good job, Melanie. Yes, about 112. That's indicated airspeed. That's what you see on the instrument. Do you remember we talked about the magnetic compass? And sometime when you put a magnetic compass in a plane, it might be near a piece of metal, and you have to change it for the calibration of how you install it. Look at the calibrated airspeed. Calibrated airspeed is indicated airspeed, corrected for installation and instrument error. I mean, every instrument is not exactly right. And then equivalent airspeed is your speed at sea level. Your speed at 30,000 feet is not exactly the same as your speed at sea level because there's denser molecules at sea level. True airspeed, corrected for altitude and temperature. So it gets kind of complicated. So this is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the question is, when you say, hey man, how fast does your plane go? An intelligent question would be, what's your normal indicated? And And like a Cessna, normal indicator is like 70 or 80 miles an hour, or 110 maybe. I think it maxes out 140 is when the wings fall off. You don't want to go past the wings falling off. And that's kind of how it works out. All right, we are going to stop here at page 324 here with the different indications. And start by 326 next time.
You're a little